Hi, I'm Wolf North Specialist Jackson Crawford, and today in Lake George, Colorado, where I did much of the work on my latest book, Two Sagas of Mythical Heroes, Hervor and Heidrek, and Rolf Kraki and his Champions, I am going to read another selection from it. What I'm going to read is Chapter 1, and not the best received version of Chapter 1, but a probably later expansion of Chapter 1 that appears in the Hoaxbook, or modern Icelandic Hoaxbook manuscript. This gives a lot more detail about how the sword Tyrfing, which is almost the central protagonist of the Saga of Hervor and Heidrek, was forged. And while some of this material may be fairly late, it is a kind of compelling, kind of fairy tale-ish story, and might ignite the imagination a little bit. So here we go. Chapter 1 of the Saga of Hervor and Heidrek from the Hoaxbook manuscript. It is told that a very long time ago there was a place called Jotunheimar to the north in Finnmark, south of Umisland, and between there and Hålogaland. There were many giants there at the time, and some of the people there were half-giants. There were close connections between the peoples there, because the giants married women from Umisland. Guðmund was the name of the king in Jotunheimar. He was a great maker of sacrifices. He lived at a farm called Grund, in the region of Glasisvellir. He was wise and powerful. He and his men lived for the equivalent of many other men's lives. It was believed that within his kingdom lay the field of undying, Odóin's Åker, and that everyone who came there was freed from sickness and old age and could not die. After Guðmund died, people began to worship him and call him their god. His son was named Hovund. He was both foresighted and wise, and he was the judge of all the men in the kingdoms nearby. He never pronounced a false judgment, and no one dared to challenge his verdicts or sentences. Another man was named Hergnir. He was a giant and a dweller in the mountains. He took Orma, daughter of Ymir, from Umisland, and married her later. Their son was Hergrim, the half-troll, and he took Ogun Elfwork from Jotunheimar and married her later. Their son was Grím. Starkad, the great daring man of Ola, had been engaged to Ogun earlier. He had 8 arms. He had gone north around Elivogar and took her away to there. Afterward, when they came home, he killed Hergrim in a duel. But Ogun killed herself with a sword because she did not want to marry Starkad. After this, Starkad married Olfhild, the daughter of King Olv of the elf homes, but Thor killed Starkad. Then Olfhild returned to her people, and Grím, the son of Hergrim, went with her until he went out raiding. Then he became the greatest kind of warrior, and married Baugerð, daughter of Starkad. He settled on an island in Hålogaland called Bolm, and he was called Island Grím of Bolm. The son of Grím and Baugerð was Arngrim the Berserker, who later lived on the island Bolm, and he was the most famous of men. A king named Sikarlami was said to be the son of Odin. His own son was named Svavarlami, who took over the kingdom after his father's death and became the greatest kind of warrior. One day, when King Svavarlami was out hunting, and he was alone without his men, he saw a large stone at about sunset. There were 2 dwarves by it. Svavarlami enchanted them by means of his beautiful sword, so that they could not return to the stone unless he allowed them. The dwarves begged him to spare their lives. He asked them what their names were, and they told him Dvalin and Dulin. The king said, "Since you are the most skillful of all dwarves, you must make me the best sword you can. The hilt and the boss must be golden, and the blade must cut through iron as though it were cloth. Rust must never appear on it, and it must claim the victory in every battle and duel for the man who wields it." The dwarves agreed to his conditions, and the king rode home. When the appointed day for them to meet again came, Svavarlami returned to the stone. The dwarves were outside, and they handed him the sword, which was very beautiful. But while Dvalin was standing in the doorway to his stone, he said, "Svavarlami, Your sword will be the death of a man each time it is drawn, and it will be used to perform 3 evil deeds. It will also be your own death. Then Swavrlami swung at the dwarves with the sword, but they ran into the stone. The sword hit the stone, and the edges sliced into it, but the dwarves escaped through their door into the inner stone. Swavrlami named the sword Tyrfing, and he always carried it in battles and duels, and always won the victory. Swavrlami had a daughter named Oifura, who was the most beautiful of all women, and the wisest. The berserker Arngrim was raiding at this time around Bjarmaland, and he came into the kingdom of King Swavrlami. He had a battle against the king, and the two of them fought personally. Swavrlami swung Tyrfing at Arngrim, but Arngrim parried with his shield. The sword cut off the bottom of Arngrim's shield and got stuck in the earth. Then Arngrim cut off Swavrlami's hand, and the sword Tyrfing fell with it. Arngrim killed Swavrlami with it, and then many other men. He left that land with a great amount of loot, and he took Oivara, the daughter of Swavrlami, with him as well to his home in Boln. They had 12 sons. Angantyr was the oldest, then Hervor, then Hjorvar, Saming, Hrani, Brami, Barri, Reivnir, Tind, Bui, and the 2 Haddings. The 2 Haddings were the youngest, and they were twins, and they did only one man's work between them. Angantyr on his own did 2 men's work, and he was a head taller than other men. All other brothers were berserkers, and they were greater than all other men in strength and daring. Even though their numbers might be fewer than their enemies, they were never on a ship with a larger force than just the 12 brothers. They traveled widely to raid and plunder, and they were often victorious in battle, and they became the most famous of men. Angantyr had the sword Tyrfing, Saming's sword was Misteltein, mistletoe, and Hervarth wielded the sword Broti. Other than that, the text of Hauksbók is about the same, although often sort of truncated relative to the main text, or the generally accepted as the best text, the R manuscript, although the R manuscript actually runs out somewhere in the riddles of Gestumblindi. Were we hearing wolves or coyotes? Or was that an owl? Was that the wolves?
Sounded like howls.
Yeah, I thought so. I don't know if it would have come across on this. If you doubt that a blade can be the protagonist of a story, read more in the Saga of Hervor and Heidrek, now available in my translation in 2 Sagas of Mythical Heroes, Hervor and Heidrek, and Hrolfgraki and his champions. And if you doubt that a sword can be cursed, or a blade can be cursed anyway, talk to me about my long history with such things. Anyway, from beautiful Colorado, beautiful Lake George, Colorado, let me wish you